how can you train someone if you've not had that experience and the challenges now are different than they were 20 years ago. Now people are broken.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Gym Owners Forum podcast. As usual, I'm Tom, and today we're mixing it up a bit. We're not going to be in the studio. We're actually going to be on the road at MK Healthhub with Matt Kendrick, who is the owner and founder of MK Healthhub, MK Reformed, and also most recently has been helping Ed Sheeran to get his men's health cover and touring the world with him, being his personal trainer while he's away on tour. What all of that amounts to and why that's good for a podcast is actually outside of the four walls of your gym. It's how can you leverage and build your own personal brand outside of those four walls, and really what kind of effort and strength and process that it takes to actually get to that step and push yourself outside of the gym and build that personal brand. So that's what we'll be diving into today, and we'll be going through his journey and his experiences. So without further ado, let's get into it.
That's kind of where I wanted to start. And I think Ed Sheeran is probably the best one for us to start off with, and then we can get this off the table. But how does that come about? And I think touching on what we were speaking about before, a lot of people say that like you see celebrities is very different, but I think, and you were saying like he lives a very hectic lifestyle, which is fair, but I think everyone within their own heads thinks they live a very, very hectic lifestyle, and more hectic than anyone else.
Totally agree.
And what was it in Ed Sheeran? Because the picture in there is like awful of it. I'm surprised you let that go out. But what is it that switches in someone's life to make them actually decide, like, this is what we need to start doing, I'm going to turn it around?
I think it's different for different people. I mean, I can say for Ed, he's open about it, that, you know, he's 34 years old. He's got 2 young children. He's got to this, I think it's an interesting question, because often life, and I'd say this about the industry and trainers, that life has these we have these decades, and each decade tends to bring something new. So in your 20s, it tends to be more social, partying, like, you know, just smashing it out. And if you're a PT, smashing hours. And then as you start to hit your 30s, there's a moment where you're kind of reviewing it. And this is what I think people talk about as mini crises or midlives or whatever they are. But really, it's just a case of just stepping back a bit and thinking, you know, maybe reevaluating where you are. For Ed, I know it was definitely a case of that, you know, he's thinking, I'm in my 30s now, I need to look after myself better. I've got 2 beautiful young kids. I want to be around forever to support them. I've got a very demanding job that, you know, with a huge amount of travel, obviously. So he's like, I want to find some balance. And it was all about health. It wasn't about, it was nothing to do with cover shoot or you know, taking your shirt off. That wasn't his goal. So it started out as a tongue in cheek, and I said to Ed, you know, like on this journey, because he said, what do you think I can achieve this year? And I said, you can achieve anything, right? So it was a world tour, so we kicked off in January in Dubai. I flew out and met him there, and then we were straight into India, China, all over the US, Europe. I left New York on the 2nd of October, so it was pretty much all the way through. And, you know, I said, we've got the time frame, but also mindful of an intense schedule. But I said, look, one thing from my experience is it's really good to look back on something as an achievement. You know, in the hectic side of life, it's easy not to. And I think the thing about photo shoots and covers and things is they put people off.
Yeah.
Because they're seen as, you know, me, vain, like, especially, you know, dare I say, because I've done them, but the tanned, topless, but I didn't do it to put it out there. I just did it for me. But as you know, when you're doing those sort of shoots, it tends to be that, you know, it's all about angles and finding the best light. So with him, I said, look, think about it, because you're going to achieve something really special this year, and you'll be amazed at what that is. And I don't think he could, you know, initially he was like, I know his management, who were, by the way, a phenomenal team, but they were like, and I get it, they're looking at covers, and no disrespect to him, like Sacha Baron, and they're going, that's not Ed's brand. He's not going to be there fake tanned up and oiled up on the front cover of Men's Health. That would destroy his brand.
Yeah.
And that's not who he is. And I think the reason why we did it and the reason why management supported it is because actually what I said is Ed's so relatable. Like, he's not a fitness guy. He's the opposite of that guy. And so many guys need to see that to be able to relate to it, because as you know, being in the industry, they look at guys like us and think, oh yeah, but you live this, you're obsessed about yourself. You're obsessed about how you look. You live this boring life where you just eat out Tupperware, and nothing could be further from the truth. But when it's health driven, it's really nice to look back on and go, wow, look what we achieved.
Yeah. He's not the sort of person that you think like loves himself and loves the way he looks.
And he really isn't.
No, exactly. And I don't mean that in a negative way either. I mean that in a sort of way where it's not even something that he computes in his head, because it's just
exactly right.
so unrelated.
I think it became, I recently found out it was Men's Health broke records with that cover, which was great, but that's everything about him because he's so relatable. Yeah. And I think he's so likable for that reason. So like when people, the response was positive because, you know what, fair play. Like, and he's telling it from a health perspective, not a, like I said, some of the other covers it's a very different take, and we didn't want to do that.
Yeah. No, it's fair. I didn't even realize he had kids actually. So yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying actually, is that like, I don't think celebrities are that different from they're not really from just people like ourselves, because all that's different is just everyone knows who they are. But I think in terms of like the thoughts that go through their head and the way they operate, they're probably very similar. How do you get to the point as a gym owner, as a trainer, where they're actually where you can sort of meet all these celebrities? How does that, as a, I don't want to say business method, but as a business, how does that come about?
Well, I'm going to go way back now. So this was probably mid 2000s. And it was at a time when the whole, like, the spotlight was in celebrity fitness. And as a brand based in the West Midlands, we're out of London, we're out of the central hub. So the exposure, I wanted to start to tell our story and also to showcase our knowledge, which had been, a huge part of my life's work. And so I knew that, we needed to be featured in a lot of magazines like Men's Health, Men's Fitness, Women's Health, those sort of things. And a new celebrity or entertainment artist would be a good way to do it. It just so happened one of our clients was, who's also a family friend, called Jasper Carrot. He was running big shows at the NEC at the time. So there were shows called Rock with Laughter, where he'd get lots of different mixes of musicians and comedy. And I said to him, look, we'd love to come and support. We're not going to pay for it. We'll come backstage. We'll offer physio, massage, which I've got a team that could do that. Fitness, nutrition, just a really nice fitness hospitality type thing at the back. And off the back of that, we obviously met artists and could showcase what we did. And then we started getting tours. So it's always about trust. It's about the fact that are you confidential, like you behave the right way, right? And it's also about who you know, because once a tour manager knows that they can trust you and you do a really good job, then that word gets out. So when I got a call on, I think literally it was the 2nd of January last year from Ed Sheeran's management, it was like, that's because of all those other things before that's what happened.
In terms of kind of taking that leap, I know you mentioned that there's obviously the trust element of it and also the kind of proving the concept of it. How do you, what was the planning that goes into, say, before that Jasper Carrot show, what's the planning that goes into that idea, and how do you prepare to kind of know that you're just going to succeed in that moment?
I think that, it's first off, what is it you're going to provide? Like, what is it that you're great at? What value can you bring? And I think you have to go in just wanting to show value and not necessarily be wanting to be reimbursed for it. And I think not enough people do that. So I look, and all the best opportunities that I've had in my life, whether I've been working at the Olympics with gold medalists or, in professional football or different sports, all of those things have come more from being willing to put myself out there and the brand out there and show that, what we're good at. When it came to looking at the entertainment industry, it's like everyone wants to look and feel better. Everyone wants to be a better version of themselves or have that support. And if you can package that up in a very easy to understand and a very easy to access way, which is what we try to do. So it's like when I go off on tour with someone, or when the team do, they're therapists, they're trainers, they're nutritionists, they're all in one. You don't need a team. You need one of us, and we'll work with whoever alongside, such as a chef, but we can take care of everything, and that then becomes a bit more attractive.
Yeah.
Just in the same way now, just going off on a tangent for a second, we've developed our own reformer bed that's folding, so we can take it on tour. So, because the other thing is, having worked with numerous artists, obviously confidentiality is key, particularly when you're in certain environments like hotel gyms or whatever else. And sometimes it's nice to have the privacy of being able to do everything that you need to do in a hotel suite as opposed to being out there.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think actually that kind of convenience and packaging everything up in a way that's kind of understandable and just like completely builds value is the way to sell it. And I think that leads quite nicely onto the golden rules that I'd sort of read about in the magazine. I'm not going to test you on it. I don't want to put you on this spot. But obviously, I know I've got them written down here. So there's obviously make it normal, compound your effort, finish smart, framework equals freedom, respect the room, adapt to the day you have, and resilience is the point. On those, so were they devised for Ed Sheeran? Were they something you and Ed came up with together, or was that something that you've kind of always had throughout?
A lot of it is our simple approach. Like, we have an approach to nutrition where, we used to call it health made simple. It is literally that we'll meet whoever it is where they're at. Too often it's like trainers are giving out these meal plans that are just so far away from where someone is. I'm like, well, let's start with just one or two simple changes. If you're eating white bread, let's maybe start with brown bread before we go no bread. You gotta be realistic. And some of those rules were specific to Ed, such as, depending on where we were in the world, if we're in, China or Mexico or wherever, Ed gets invited to the best restaurants in town, and they want to showcase the meals and their cuisine, rightly so. And the last thing I was going to do is create rules around you can't, because it's disrespectful. Yeah, it's a cultural thing as well. So I was very much about, look, and that's, I believe that in life. I've worked with a lot of high-level corporates. The last thing I want to do when part of their life is networking, like we talked about earlier, and business dinners, and they're like, it can be seen as slightly offensive when they sat there and they're going, I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that, because it doesn't flow. And so I'd rather work around someone's life. And that's how we approach things at MK. It's like, tell us what it is you want, and we'll work out what you need, but it's got to fit your life. It's not my life or anyone else's. So it's the same whoever they are.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think the simple rules that you were kind of explaining to always follow. Can we go back a little bit to when MK first opened? It's like the sign of a good movie. You start at the end, go back to the start,
Sure.
Finish at the end again. So, if you could take us back to the start of MK, kind of dive into a little bit about why you opened it, when it opened, and kind of how you applied those rules into that kind of decision making and actually opening it as well.
Yeah, sure. So, I am genuinely a dinosaur in this industry. So I started back in the late 90s. I started in a corporate health club like most personal trainers do, which was that horrible cold selling on a gym floor, which ironically still goes on today, which I can't quite believe. And I quickly realized that the health club model was kind of broadly based on failure, really. There was only a small percentage of members that were actually using and getting results. I wanted to change it. I approached the operator and said, look, I will fund all of the educational side, but I'd like to help implement some guidelines and standards to start to create change for people, which, for whatever reason at the time wasn't something they wanted to do. So I decided to go on my own. And that really, I think, ignited my passion and started the journey. And over the next 10 years or so, I spent a huge amount of time in the States. I went out and studied East Coast, West Coast, went out to Canada, picked the best experts in the fields of strength and conditioning, Pilates, nutrition, performance, all different areas. And I would badger people. I'd go and pay to spend time with them, intern with them, to really, I was just obsessed with knowing as much as I could to help people. And then over time, I didn't intend to have a business or staff. I was just passionate about what I was doing. We grew rapidly within the health club, ironically, that I'd left as a PT and went back self-employed. we took over the ground floor and the middle floor and ended up staffing the gym floor, which would be unheard of now. We opened MK Healthhub in Solihull in 2014. And it was all my influence from the States, I've got to say. You know, we were probably one of the first boutique providers. We launched Dynamic Reformer Pilates in 2014, as you know now, as the rest of the world does. It's having its moment.
Yeah.
But we've been doing it for well over 10 years. And that was purely in my experience in America too, you know, all the different studios. And so I wanted to create, the reason why it was a hub is because I wanted to create a place where people could get everything they needed. We'd got doctors, we'd got sports massage therapists, physiotherapists, we've got osteopathy, we've got obviously a brilliant team of trainers, nutrition, we've got juice bar access. Everything was under one roof. And so if someone was training and had an issue, they'd go to the physio, but the physio and the trainer would be talking for the best of the client or the patient.
What was the initial reaction to that in 2014? Because to be honest, it's like before I was still in school.
And now I feel like, yeah. So it was great. We quadrupled in size over the next 2 years. We were busting at the seams. And I think people were ready for it.
Yeah.
Dynamic Reformer was pretty much sold out within the first 18 months. It was, you know, we were running 50 sessions a week. We were running small group training sessions, and we averaged, personal training was always at our core. That's where I started, obviously, and we were averaging 350 hours plus every single week. So it was a really, really busy time.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. I think it's quite interesting because actually now when you look at like gyms today and literally any club really, and all the successful, like even like your Soho houses, more membership clubs, they're all kind of now starting to follow that idea of just like gyms are actually hubs, health hubs.
Yes.
Shut up. That like, yeah, do the whole package for everyone basically.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is that convenience, and the US people say is always like 5 years ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And from what you've said, that sounds like you kind of feel the same. What is the reasoning for that? Is it just like more people, or is it?
Yeah, I think it's probably a number of things. I think the way they've always been ahead in the way they approach sport. I've interned in those kind of facilities, and you know, when I was working in Premiership football, I was very much like, guys, there's a different approach here. These guys need to be in the weights room. You know, they want to get more powerful and quicker. Whereas the old traditional style was very much still very rooted in cardio and running. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it's probably everything to do with the size of the United States, but the hubs, the real spots are East Coast, as in New York down to Miami, and West Coast, Los Angeles, obviously, that going up. And that's where I spent a lot of time and studied. And interestingly, it doesn't stop. I mean, as you'll probably know, biohacking is now the next thing, which I was out in the States in 2019, and you know, it was all happening then. I went to a conference and I was like, this is unbelievable. You know, we need to get hot and cold, and we need to get hyperbaric oxygen, and we need to do this. And we brought that into this hub in 2022. So we had a hyperbaric chamber, we had cryotherapy chamber, we had all of the stuff that was, you know, infrared light, all of the stuff that you see is becoming more mainstream.
It's quite early, yeah.
But it was too early. And I would argue outside London, it's still early. Yeah. And that's 6 years on from when I was in the States at the conference. And I went last year to Austin to the same conference. And now it's stem cells and it's peptides and it's just going on. And it's like you come back, and my excitement, because at the core, this is what I love, is we've got to do this. I want to bring this in, but it's like, we've just got to hold off because there's a huge educational catch-up piece.
Yeah, 100%. I think when you look at things like ice baths as well, I'd argue they're probably mainstream now because people actually have them in their home. Yeah, but actually, I think I guarantee probably the majority of those people don't actually know what it does. They just do it every morning, and it's become that routine. And so they're not really getting the max out of it. And I think it like, even when you go to a gym, there's just a couple kids like messing around in the ice bath, and it's like, guys, I think there really is that lack of education, and that's the next step of how we push the industry forward. And you know, not to blow smoke up our own asses, but I feel like that's actually what we're kind of trying to do, is actually learn that knowledge and then share it out to people. So
stuff like this, it's brilliant. You know, this is what the industry needs, genuinely.
Yeah.
because that's how you learn. That's how I learn. I learn as much on podcasts and audio as I do going in person to different places around the world. You know, it's a good combination.
It is. And I think like the reality is I'm probably, well, definitely the freshest person to the industry in this room. And just purely from this, I feel like I learned so much just by talking, engaging, and kind of, it's that sales tactic, like playing the blue-eyed boy. Have you heard of that? That's it, where you basically are just like, I'm so new to all this. Like, teach me everything you know, and people do just kind of gush and spill. So it's a tactic, sure. But I think that is, as we say, like the right way to push the industry forward. And I think it's kind of what we need to do. On that, is there anything you're doing here that's like more, I think more member-focused kind of education on their treatment?
Yeah, I mean, what we did pre-COVID, COVID's changed things a lot. And I think I only feel like now we're starting to return. It's been such a long journey back. I think people's behaviors changed, their routines have changed. It's been a big adjustment. But we were always doing seminars, like educational seminars, whether that's sleep, stress, resilience. It was primarily pre-COVID, much more about longevity, nutrition. We brought DNA testing in. There's lots of things we brought in that we'd have seminars and educate before we launched. And now we're returning to seminars because people still want that community. They want to get back together, and to learn together is brilliant because then they're talking about it afterwards. It's a great way to do it.
We've been talking about like fads and trends. Yeah. And it seems like your kind of philosophy has been, it's working, someone's doing it. So like the longevity, the biohacking stuff, even the reformer stuff initially back in 2014. Is your ethos kind of implement everything and try everything once and then see what happens after? Or how do you kind of tactically select which kind of trend is the best one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if I implemented everything, I think that's all we'd be doing, because that's fitness, right? So there's always something. I always look to see what can we do really well. Like, we chose not to do high rocks because we felt that we could, unless we can do it equally or better than what's around, then why would we do it?
Yeah.
And so when we were personal training, we were always way ahead of it because I never stopped learning. So my team never stopped learning. It's the same with dynamic reformer. We were ahead of it because we were learning before anyone else was doing it. And you have to, if you're going to do that and be successful, I think you have to, it's really important that you don't try and be everything to everyone. You've got to know what you're really good at and continuously hone that and make it better. So I'm a typical fitness professional in that I would actually probably quite like to do everything because I find it all great, but you can't, not if you want to be really good at
do what you do best. No, I think it goes back to what you were saying about working with Ed earlier, that even though he was kind of pushing to do more and work harder, like his schedule is obviously crazy, and he's trying to do 6 workouts a week, for example, and you kind of said like take a step back and move back. I think that's kind of the sign of someone that actually really cares about like the role and the what it means to be a PT. And I think and not throw you under the bus, but I know you kind of have some viewpoints on this. I think there's a lot of, I think it's fair to say that the standard of PTing has probably remained the same, if not dropped, over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that kind of just get the qualification and don't really understand what it means to be a good PT. So, I mean, I was just interested to get your perspective on what is the sort of state of the industry in terms of the quality of PTing and what makes a good PT? What does it mean to be a PT?
I think when I talk about being a PT to the team or to anyone that comes for advice or wants to come into the industry, I'm always like, the number one thing that will set you apart, number one above everything else, is you've got to care passionately about the people in front of you more than yourself. And I think the problem with the industry often is people get into it because they're into it. Now, that's fine, but you've got to then realize it's not about you. It's actually about whoever's in front of you, and it's their journey. You're there to facilitate that journey. So whoever you are, I say that the best personal trainers are chameleons. They can wear the right hat at the right time. So if that means that too often they get caught in a box, they become the guy that beasts everyone, or they're the kettlebell guy or the boxing guy. It's like, that's crazy. If you're a good fitness professional, they're just tools. You've got a big tool bag, learn all the tools, and then know when to get out what and why you're doing it. So, sometimes someone will need you to be a shoulder to cry on, or they might need you to put them through the floor. But you've got to be caring enough to see the difference and listen. Talk less, listen more.
Yeah, I think it leans into what you were saying earlier about like just being successful in business in general, about like the networking and having respect for people. And I think it is those golden rules really. It's to have success in life it is show that respect, that understanding and that kind of care that, as you say, it's their goals. And is it almost that you've got to have like no ego as a PT, and it's all about...
Yeah, I think no ego is probably wishful thinking. So definitely less ego, right? I think the industry is full of ego. I don't think social media has helped that. So when I think back before social media as a dinosaur, it was easier because people would get into the industry and it was much more about practical learning in person. What virtual has done, whilst it's done a lot of good things, is, you know, we were holding a lot of seminars and we worked with a lot of high level coaching businesses that were bringing trainers into some of our facilities and using them to train them. And we had conversations, and a lot of these guys were, I'd say, you know, what's their journey? And these guys would go, they want to go straight online. I'm like, have they worked in person? No, they've never worked with anyone in person. They want to train everyone online. I'm like, how can you train someone if you've not had that experience and the challenges now are different than they were 20 years ago. Now people are broken, more broken than they were. It's no longer a conversation about how fit you want to get. It's what health issues do you have? So you've got to be much more than just a fitness professional. You've got to understand physiology. You've got to have good referral networks because you're going to come up with different challenges. And most importantly, you've got to have emotional intelligence. You've got to be able to understand and really want to get into that person's head, find their barriers and care enough to help them bring those barriers down. And if you don't, and you go into a session in a trainer mindset of we're doing this or we're doing that, you've missed it.
I think that the people like we are an industry that's so people focused, and it's I always draw a comparison purely from my girlfriend who works in the restaurant industry, but the comparison between the restaurant and the gym industry is that they're both so people focused and they're both so passion driven as well. And I think you do get a lot of people in there that just like love cooking, obviously in the cooking in the restaurant industry, but you get people that are obsessed with like cooking, or they're obsessed with, you know, bodybuilding, and that's kind of, as you say, that becomes their niche and their like personality, and it really takes away from actually the fact that your main purpose is to kind of serve and to
make people feel good. You know, that's it's hospitality. I say this to the guys all the time. You know, you're only as good as your last session. If someone's paying a lot of money to come, whether that's in a group or whether that's one-to-one, you need to be good every single time. So and if you have to act, you need to be able to act. But otherwise, for me, it's only going to go one way. So it's a really good analogy with restaurants and the hotel industry, because I think we're here to help people and to make people feel good and, you know, to make them feel part of something.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think when I walked into the club, I could kind of really get that feeling straight away. I mean, there's people on the desk that are welcoming you. Even all the members of staff are really like just like laughing at each other, giving each other like conversation. And it's a nice feel. And I think even Brew 23, so obviously are they just Midlands based?
Yeah, at the moment, I think they've probably got plans. They're a fantastic offer. Again, it's great for us because they're high quality, and also healthy. You know, we're aligned in values, and so it works really well for us. And I think in terms of what we do, that is also an important part, that we want it to be more than somewhere where you move. It's that, again, somewhere where it's not to be cliched with the third space, right?
Yeah.
It is between work and home, a place where you make friendships, and there's a lot of people here that have become friends through here, that then the social nights and all of that stuff is important, you know?
What's next for the industry? It's obviously looking at all the kind of new things you're adding and implementing into the gym. What's next for MK? What's the kind of next thing you value as like the important next step that you're going to aim towards?
I think for us, we've got a very clear vision of where we want to take the brand. We're expanding into Manchester and Cheshire next month. We've got London this year penciled in as well. Ultimately, we'd love to take it overseas. There's huge opportunities. We're launching our first retreat this year. And we definitely want that to be a regular thing as well. I think with the industry, it's definitely going more wellness focused. Movement will always be part of it, but movement's one part of it. And I think fitness will become more overall wellness. You can see that now with social wellness. So these clubs, and again, it'll be interesting to see where it goes, right? So obviously Remedy Place and those kind of brands have taken it to a really high quality spa type level. And now there's more popping up, particularly in London and actually Manchester, where it's communal cold plunges and saunas. I think it'll be interesting with the UK because we're culturally different.
Yeah.
You know? But I think having more hot, cold recovery, you know, Therabody brought in all their tools, emphasis on sleep, infrared light, all of those things are only good. And everyone's, you know, the challenge is the pace of life, the managing stress, and still being healthy in that. So communal places that you can come to and not just move, but also recover well and look after yourself well can only be a good thing. And I think that's where it will go.
When you say education's part of that next step as well, who educating who, I guess, is the first part of that. And like, seminars are boring. Is that okay for me to say?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Like, how do you kind of go around that and maybe kind of make that education a bit more accessible, a bit more fun?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's probably like multi-level. Yes, probably. I think the industry is responsible to educate, but it needs to do it in a non-preachy and all-inclusive way. So it needs to be, you know, like, it always makes me laugh. And trust me, if anyone's followed these things from the 5 a.m. club onwards with get up, do your gratitude, you pray, do your red light, do your meditation, do your breath work. You've lost half a day by the time you've optimized yourself. It's just not practical.
Yeah.
You know, and people just switch off. So I think it's about how can we make some of these things really accessible and fitting into where people's lives are. I think what we end up doing often as an industry is going, you need this and you need this and you need this. And it's like overload.
I think that's a good place to end, actually, on the future and what's ahead.
Sure.
Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers.
So that is all for this episode of the Gym Owners Forum podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much to Matt for sharing his experiences and his journey and his general insights. I think my key takeaway from that would actually just be, I think, the kind of proof that it really is just that determination and that effort and that self-belief in what you're doing when you really do believe in it, is going to be the thing that kind of really propels you to success and takes you above that standard. It's a great insight, something to take on board. And I think if you want more information and insights like that, head to any streaming service where you can get podcasts and look for the Gym Owners Forum podcast. If you want some quick fire, actionable tips and tricks and news from the industry, head to our socials, give us a follow and check that out. And also our website is in the description for more news on events and just access to everything that we do. We'll see you on the next episode.